Morning YouTubers, it's George. I'm in my old garage but before I start, I'm not a mechanic by trade, and this is how I solved a problem on my motorhome, but I thought it might be useful to share it because I believe Houseless Not Homeless has got the same problem as I had, and I had Driveshaft rubber gaiter problems. Now here's a typical rubber gaiter off a Talbot Express. They're similar on a Pelotti, the Citroen C25 and other vehicles. And what can happen is the rubber gaiter can be intact, not damaged, but the clip comes off this end. And the issue is, to get a new clip on, you have to dismantle, you have to take the wheel off, jack the vehicle up, take the wheel off, undo the bearing, drop a ball joint on the bottom suspension arm and all this business. And unless you've got the right tools and the money to get a garage to do it, it's an absolute pig to do, just for one clip. Now what you need to do, this is how I done it. The first thing I did was I removed the clip from this end and slid this along. Now the reason why you've got to slide it, you've got to slide it out of the way, because this end sits in a groove like that, so you can't get at the clamp. So if you slide the boot along, you can then look in the slot where the clamp is, and you need to use a hook to hook out the original clamp that's still in this gap here on your vehicle. It can also, if it fails, this clip, it can cut and slice this here, so you have to change the whole boot. But in a lot of cases it just comes off, and you need something with a hook, and you've got to get rid of the original one. Now the replacements look like this, and the problem is with these, it's a special tool. This is a small one, by the way. I threw the big ones away. You need a tool which looks like a bit like this to squash that in. So you fit it round the rubber, and then you squash it with a device a bit like this, and when that's squashed, it's then hammered flat. A lot of garages tools don't carry these tools because the vehicle's old and the modern way of doing it is completely different. The issue is, when that is round, the gaiter, because it's in the casting, you can't get anything in to tighten them, because it's inside this groove like that. You can't get a tool above it because this is inside, so they're no good at all. What you can do is what I did originally. I got a piece of garden wire and I made a hoop like that. I slid the boot back in to the groove, fed the wire round it, and then bent it back on itself, pulled it with a pair of pliers. You can see there's like a loop I've put there, and I've soldered it so it don't undo. And then you just bend the wire back, you pull it tight, bend the wire back on itself. I'm doing this with my camera in my hand. Let me put the camera down a minute. So you bend it back like that, but you pull it tight with a couple of pair of pliers, and you need pin nose pliers to do it. That's one way of doing this. But the groove you put it into is full of grease, and you need to wash it down with either petrol on a paintbrush or paraffin on a paintbrush to get the excess grease. Otherwise it's a real mess to work on. So that's one way of doing it, with a piece of wire like that. You can't obviously use hose clamps because again they won't go in the groove, but you can get clamps like this. Can you see the end? Again, what you can do is you can put it round, then you can pull this. You see that bit slides backwards and forwards and tightens. And then what you can do is you can bend that back on itself. I'll try and show it like that to lock it in place, and then you bend those tabs down, and you can bend those tabs down by actually inserting a screwdriver into the slot and bending them back. And you can do that in that small gap where this rubber. It is absolutely fiddly nightmare to do. You need lots of patience, and you need a pair of pin nose pliers and a screwdriver, and you can do it that way. You can see it slips backwards and forwards. There is other styles of them. You know, there's another one of these horrible clamps that you need the special tool, and you get these when you buy a new one of them. Absolute nightmare to do. The other thing you've got to be careful of is this end on any drive shaft. If you use a hose clamp like that, because this is weighty that side, it can unbalance the drive shaft. It won't be balanced anymore, and that can cause problems. So the best thing for this end is use some nylock cable ties, and also move it further that way, because these get pulled off when you go from full lock on your steering. It can actually pull these boots off, so you can move this more that way to put pressure to keep this in where it's supposed to be. Other methods I've known people do with these boots is, believe it or not, use silicone adhesive, and when it's degreased, you obviously got to degrease in here, run a bead of silicone Sisterflex or anything like that in here, push it as far in as it goes and leave it for a couple of days, and it will actually glue this rubber bit onto the metal. And as long as that's pushed up further than it would be by an inch that way, it will keep it pushed in. You can get what's called split boots, and I'll put a photo of one of those up next. They're a thinner material, and they've got a split down there, and they come with a special super glue. And so if you've got a torn one of these, you can buy split boots to fit, and because they're a slightly thinner rubber here, it's even more easier to get these things on. Now I don't know how helpful this video is, and it is an absolute pig to do if you have to dismantle the vehicle to do it. It's a bit of a pain in the arse to do underneath without dismantling the vehicle. It's just one of those really stupid jobs. I was willing to pay a garage to do mine in the end, but the guy said to me, it's a special tool, we don't have that tool to put these things on. So they didn't want to do it. But if you're looking, Martin, and this helps in any way, thumbs up to you, mate. It's going to be a struggle.